Good morning, folks. Ooh, that's very loud. Good morning. It's good to see everybody this morning. Oh, it's a beautiful day. It's a beautiful day to be out. It's a beautiful morning. Thank you all for coming. It's good to see you. We do have a couple quick announcements before we get going this morning. One is we will be having new to UU or new to Emerson class. It's not really a class, it's a meeting. This morning after services, we will be meeting upstairs in the library. If you are new to Emerson and would just like to know a little bit more about us, you can come on up. We'll have refreshments and we'll be up there to answer your questions and to generally walk you through some introductory things. Also, I'd like to announce my wonderful communications team has recognized that I've put together a series of sermons coming up in August, September, starting next week, going until Halloween, about reclaiming. And they wanted me to make you aware of that because they wanted you to, because we didn't want to get to the end of it and then you say, oh, that was a series. So far what we have is reclaiming the American dream, reclaiming the Bible, reclaiming faith, reclaiming the American flag, reclaiming freedom, and reclaiming the Constitution. So we are going to address those sensitive issues from a religious standpoint, and it should be fun-ish. Last thing this morning is we have with us here our lay pastoral ministry team. They are scattered about in the church wearing a yellow name tag. If something is bubbling up for you or something is a concern for you, feel free to just reach out and talk to them, and they can put you in touch with the correct internal resources that you need to help you out. That team is here for you. So we appreciate you being here today. And we invite our wonderful Atsum to bring us into the formal part of our service.
Good morning. Good morning. As we gather in community, we look within ourselves and to each other for strength, restoration, and inspiration, so that as we journey together, we catch the spark of the eternal Spirit, and from that spark we light our chalice flame. Lighting the chalice flame symbolizes to all that the spirit of our congregation is strong and that our will to transform ourselves and the world is also strong. We light the flame with gratitude. We light the flame in memory of all those who have gone before, in honor of all those who are here now, and with joy for all those who are yet to come. As Chris Taylor lights our chalice flame here in the sanctuary, I invite those of you at home to light a candle or a chalice of your own. Our chalice lighting words for August come from American poet Andrea Gibson. Gibson's poetry focuses on gender norms, politics, social justice, LGBTQ, and after their cancer diagnosis, Gibson also began writing poetry on topics including depression, illness, life, and mortality. They were named the Poet Laureate of Colorado in 2025 and died just a couple of weeks ago in July of this year, leaving us with 7 books of poetry and 7 albums of spoken word poetry. This is from their 2011 collection called You'd Better Be Lightning. Please join me in reading these words together as they appear on your screen. I will refuse to call it heaven if the people I love who put me through hell aren't there. As we work to create a beloved community, we welcome all those who would join us in building a better world with more love, more justice, and more peace. We welcome all who would join us in growing in mind, heart, and spirit. We welcome all who would join us in tearing down systems of oppression of all kinds. We welcome all who would join their purposes to ours in a loving spirit of right relationship. Please join me in our welcoming words. The words are on the screen. Wherever you are, wherever you come from, wherever you find yourselves on your life's journey, whichever your pronouns, whether you've walked in or rolled in or dialed in, whomever you love, you are welcome here. And now we have our presentation of this week in Unitarian Universalist history with Richard Cummins. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, Jill. Good morning. Good morning. From Frank Schulman's book, This Day in UU History, I've selected 2 items from this week in UU history. On the 21st of August in 1811, Henry Bergh was born, B-E-R-G-H. He was the son of a wealthy shipbuilder and followed in his father's business for a while. Although he studied at Columbia College in New York City, he did not graduate. Under the ministry of Henry Whitney Bellows at All Souls Church in New York, Bergh became a Unitarian. On a trip to Russia, he became interested in the treatment of animals and often intervened when he saw animals abused on the streets. Following his return to the United States, Bergh persuaded the New York legislature to charter the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. He was elected its president and worked for that cause the rest of his life. And on the 24th of August in 1662, on this date, which is St. Bartholomew's Day, 2,000 ministers in England were expelled from their positions in the Church of England by the Act of Uniformity, which required all clergy to subscribe to 39 articles of religion. This expulsion, often called the Great Ejection, began the Great Dissent tradition in England. Many of the dissenters became Unitarian leaders. Before then, religious groups that left the church were known as separatists. Ed?
Troublemakers. Troublemakers, oh. Be gone with you, troublemakers. I did not know that the person who founded the Society for the Cruelty to Animals was a Unitarian. I didn't know that. That was good. Thank you, Richard. Each time we are gathered, we hear words from one of our 6 Unitarian Universalist sources. Today, we are celebrating the 100th anniversary of the publication of the great work of American fiction, The Great Gatsby, by F. Scott Fitzgerald. Both our opening words and our second reading later in the service today will come from the narrator of that book, and some say the real author of that book, Nick Carraway. So depending on how you look at things, The words today either come from Nick or F. Scott Fitzgerald, however you want that to be. Whoever gets credit, here are the words for your reflection. They are the opening words of the book. In my younger and more vulnerable years, my father gave me some advice that I've been turning over in my mind ever since. Whenever you feel like criticizing anyone, he told me, just remember that all people in this world haven't had the advantages that you've had. And now, with our chalices lit and our hearts and our minds centered here in the room, we invite you to join us by singing our first hymn. You may stand if you're comfortable, or you may stay seated, but we just invite you to sing with us the I Seek the Spirit of a Child.
Emerson collects an offering each week, like many communities of faith, but our offering is not for our church, which is supported by the annual pledges of our members. We collect our Sunday offering is both transformative spiritual act and an important way to live our values. 75% of today's offering will go to August's Share the Plate recipient, Emerson's ESL program. I would think that you all would know that it means English as a second language. The program was created in 2014 to serve the fast-growing immigrant population of Houston. We have served students from all over the globe who speaking 12 different native languages. After a COVID hiatus, the program is back and running strong, and you, the Emerson community, are its largest supporter. Please join us in this important work with your financial support. The remaining 25% of today's offering will go to our wonderful community partner, Interfaith Ministries Meals on Wheels program, which uses our donated treasures to provide meals to thousands of Houston's homebound seniors each and every day. You can go to our website for online giving, put a cash or check in our offering baskets that are at the back of the sanctuary or in the front, or you can go to our webpage or mail a check to the church. During the offering, children may go to attend their RE class and may follow any teachers to their classrooms.
Yeah. Where even is she? I can't. Oh. I wanted to, before we go into our meditation time, I wanted to just briefly mention to you that ESL had its language, English as a Second Language program, had its registration yesterday, and we will once again have a full house. We will once again be turning people away. I know, it's wonderful. It's such hard work, but it's so wonderful to see it going on. So I invite you now into a time of gaily peace. Peace, just a moment to be with yourself, which is so hard to find in these days. A moment to just sit and feel yourself being where you are, feeling what you're feeling. And just meditate today, if you would, on your breathing, on just the feeling that you feel when the air rushes into your lungs, and the feeling that you feel when the air leaves your body and it comes back and forth and back and forth, reminding you who you are and that you are here right now.
The words for our second reading today also come from Nick Carraway, narrator of the story of The Great Gatsby as told by American author Scott Fitzgerald through Nick. This comes very near the very end of the book, as Nick is reflecting on the events of the book and the people, characters who lived those events. He says, "They were careless people, Tom and Daisy. They smashed up things and creatures, and then retreated back into their money or their vast carelessness, or whatever it was that kept them together, and let other people clean up the mess they had made."
I want to tell you how much I got into the work of putting together this service this week. I mean, I really love doing that work, but particularly this week. It was like I couldn't put it down. I just have to keep going. I probably spent way too much time on this sermon because I really love the work. When I work on a service, I start with an idea, and today's service started with the idea that this is the 100th anniversary of the publication of Great Gatsby. And it is a book that I had read in college. I had taken a class, Francine and I had both taken a class in college called Paris, New York, and the 20s and 30s. And it was a book focused basically on this period of time. It was a wonderful class. It was co-taught by a French teacher, an English teacher, a philosophy teacher, and a history teacher. So there was no shortage of awareness of what was going on in the room. It was a great class. I still think about it today. And I just want to say, as I always say, every time I mention going to college, St. Anselm College was, the wonderful monks at St. Anselm paid for me to go to college there, and that's something I'll always be grateful for. I wouldn't be here right now if it weren't for them. So when I do this research, I go down these rabbit holes, right? And many times I can say that quite regularly, actually, I do a whole lot of research, a whole lot of these journeys into these rabbit holes ends up on the cutting room floor. I don't use it, right? I probably do 3 times as much reading and research as I actually use in the service. But this time, it was different. All of those rabbit holes seemed to merge into one coherent story. I want to use the metaphor that all the threads came together to form a tapestry, but it wasn't like that, because these people were a mess. It is much more like a bowl of spaghetti. And trying to trace one thread of spaghetti. What's a single spaghetti called? A spaghetti? What? A strand? One single noodle. There you go. One single noodle of spaghetti throughout the bowl of spaghetti, covered in sauce, trying to figure out. So all of this week was just so glorious and so human and so messy. Each of those rabbit holes in my work this week was a person, either a character in a book or a real life person. And like I said before, they were a mess. Never before, and I think quite possibly never since, has the line between an artist and the art been so blurred. That course I took, Paris, New York, in the 20s and 30s, it introduced me to one of my still favorite books of all time, Hemingway's Movable Feast, which no one's ever read, right? No one's ever read it. My favorite book, that tells you a little bit about me. It was a memoir, by all accounts, and a highly tilted memoir, but it read like a true history, but it was not a true history. It was highly tilted. And the Fitzgeralds did not come out smelling good in this memoir, but Gatsby did. Hemingway, in the memoir, says, if he, Fitzgerald, could write a book as fine as The Great Gatsby, I, Hemingway, was sure he could write an even better one. With all of that, I will say that I am not a literature enthusiast. I am certainly not a critic. And I'm barely even a reader. I see the term pleasure reading as a bit of an oxymoron. But I do like what I like, and a lot of what I like, Hemingway especially, comes from my experience in that one class. So if you're looking for a thorough evaluation of the book and the characters and the storylines, you're not going to get it. What you will get more accurately, what I hope you will get, is a view into how sometimes the more things change, the more they really don't change at all. To understand the people and the story that I'm about to get into, you have to have a little context. So let me give you a little context. We are dipping here, in my opinion, into one of the most interesting periods of time in the past couple centuries. There were so many names for this period because it was so interesting. In France, years later, after World War II, after they learned that World War I, quote, the war to end all wars, wasn't, they started to refer to this period that we're talking about as l'entre-deux-guerres, which is between the two wars. As we are fond of doing now, they also took time to name their generations. And this generation, which was the first generation to come of age in the 1900s, was referred to as the lost generation. It was lost in the sense that the spirit of the generation was disoriented, wandered back and forth directionless as the war's survivors came back and mixed into the larger society and somehow together tried to make sense of World War I. Also in France, they called it les années folles. Les années folles, it means the crazy years in French, but not crazy in terms of woohoo, but crazy in terms of deranged or demented or unhinged kind of way. It is also a period of time that was referred to as the Roaring Twenties and the Jazz Age. So they had a lot of names for the period, which tells you that there was a very interesting period, right? One key component, and one of the reasons for that so much was going on in France, was because this period was also referred to as the Prohibition era in the United States. So these people were very fueled by alcohol, so they went to France where they could get alcohol and, they could get it period, and they could get it free of the law. And I will just take a side moment here to say regulating morality always works out so well for us. We should do it more often. Back to Movable Feast. Hemingway said of his time in Paris, if you're lucky enough to have lived in Paris as a young man, then wherever you go for the rest of your life, it stays with you, because Paris is a movable feast. The art produced in this period was substantive and real and really reflected the bending of the culture after the distortion of World War I. Art Nouveau was the grandfather of Dada, which was in style at the beginning of this period. Dada was a revolt against logic, reason, and the cult of beauty that had come out of an impotent and disgusting form of capitalism that itself had resulted in the absurdity of war. Dada was nonsense, irrationality, and anti-bourgeois messaging. Along with artists, there were writers in this group. As a whole, they ended up being called, this whole group ended up being called the same name as their larger generation, the Lost Generation. The group split time between Paris, New York, London, and Berlin, but the epicenter was Paris. Specifically Montparnasse, Le Marais, Montmartre, these three neighborhoods or arrondissements in Paris. You can, by the way, still take walking tours of the cafes in which they met. And when Francine and I were there 10 years ago, we had lunch at one of the cafes in which they would sit and essentially mooch off the cafe because they didn't have any money. So they said they bought one glass of wine and stayed for a day and a half or whatever it was. The writers that were there, just to give you some names: Thomas Wolfe, Ernest Hemingway, Dorothy Parker, T.S. Eliot, Ezra Pound, Jean Rhys, James Joyce, Henry Miller, Aldous Huxley, Isadora Duncan, J.R.R. Tolkien, John Dos Passos, Henry Strader, and the bookseller Sylvia Beach, who was very important to the group because that's where they got their money. And lest we forget, one of the most important members of the group was André Gide, who went on to found the New French Review and influenced subsequent writers such as Sartre and Camus. There were composers hanging around in the group: George Gershwin, Aaron Copland, and Sergei Prokofiev. I got it, he says. Okay. Pablo Picasso, Marcel Duchamp, Juan Miró, Juan Gris, Luis Quintanilla, and Man Ray were all there. This was an amazing period of time. And they all met in the living room of the American writer Gertrude Stein, who filled her home with art from Cézanne, Picasso, Gauguin, Renoir, Delacroix, and Matisse when you could buy it for wine. Can you imagine? Picasso even painted a portrait of her to repay some debt he owed her. And there, in the middle of all of that, was F. Scott Fitzgerald. Franklin Scott Key Fitzgerald. Francis Scott Key Fitzgerald. He was named after Francis Scott Key, a distant cousin, the guy who wrote the Star-Spangled Banner, right? Fitzgerald was one of the few of them who had had any success at this time. You may recognize the names, of course, but that's years on. At this time, most of them, especially the writers, were not wealthy, or at best were not wealthy yet, except for Fitzgerald, who may not have been wealthy, but he was at least not showing up at Gertrude Stein's place because he couldn't afford to go anywhere else. Fitzgerald had come from a middle-class Roman Catholic family who struggled from time to time. The family had to move at the collapse of one of their family businesses. He attended it and dropped out of Princeton, a Protestant school which did not please the parents. But he dropped out of Princeton, and while he was there for a short time, he fell in love with someone who was unattainable for him based on social class. And this love would be one of the repeating themes in his work. After leaving Princeton, after having been rejected by Genève, Fitzgerald volunteered for service in World War I, hoping to die gloriously rather than live with his unrequited love. Oh my God. It's like a bad movie. The war ended before he could be deployed. That's the luck, right? But while waiting to be deployed, he met Zelda, who he did marry. Zelda was also above his class, but Zelda was more rebellious than Genève, and he married Scott. They had one daughter named Scotty, and they lived a life that was wild, drunken, and what we would call today full of drama. Unfortunately, either caused by their lifestyle or exacerbated by their lifestyle, Zelda fell into mental illness and eventually needed constant care. This need to care for Zelda caused Fitzgerald to spend any money he made on her, and also to use it to perpetuate his own severe alcoholism and his alcoholistic-fueled lifestyle. The combination of Zelda's yet unrecognized mental condition and the Fitzgerald's recognized but uncriticized alcoholism left Zelda and Fitzgerald to living a life that probably made his books seem a lot less like fiction to him than they might to us. To him, they might have just been storytelling what he saw as normal. Unrequited love caused by being outside of the circle was a theme that flowed through Fitzgerald's life and work and was a prominent theme in his writing and in his life. The characters and the people became that messy bowl of spaghetti that I talked about earlier. The names change, but the spirit and the thread live on. Genevieve King, the real-life unrequited Princeton love, becomes Isabelle Bourget in This Side of Paradise, Gloria Gilbert in The Beautiful and the Damned, Daisy Buchanan in The Great Gatsby, and of course his real-life marriage to Zelda Sayer, also unattainable due to her mental condition. The thread continues on in real life with Lois Moran, a real-life 18-year-old love interest that the then 31-year-old and married Fitzgerald had. And that character becomes Rosemary Hoyt in Tender is the Night, another 18-year-old with whom the protagonist had a relationship. Fitzgerald himself is very thinly veiled Amory Blaine in This Side of Paradise, Anthony Patch in The Beautiful and the Damned, Great Gatsby himself in The Great Gatsby, and Dick Diver in Tender is the Night. So with all these books, Fitzgerald was wealthy and well-known, right? Wrong. The first 2 books sold well, which enabled him to fund his gin-fueled lifestyle with Zelda, and later to provide ongoing care for Zelda and her illness. The problem was that the next 2 books, Gatsby and Tender is the Night, sold terribly. Fitzgerald finally found sobriety in 1939 and stayed sober by all accounts until his death a year later at 44. The physical effects of alcohol were irreversible by then and led to his demise despite him having found sobriety. In his lifetime, or 15 years after Gatsby, it never earned out its advance. In other words, he got paid $5,000 for Gatsby in 1924, and that was it. He died, according to his daughter, knowing that the book was great and plagued by the fact that it didn't sell worth a lick. So what happened? Gatsby and later Tender is the Night were tone deaf to American society. The pressure valve had popped in World War I, and the end of the war was a relief. The war to end all wars had happened. And how could we go back to our fun? This made This Side of Paradise and The Beautiful and the Damned welcome in the eyes of Americans. Gatsby, however, continued that thread, but it pushed it too long. Gatsby was too much. There was a growing acknowledgement at the time that the rift between the rich and the poor was out of control. Gatsby, even the wealthy Gatsby, could not get into the in crowd, and this made America angry. I think Fitzgerald actually felt bad for Gatsby. The problem was America did not. They hated him. The Fitzgeralds, dwelling on the fact that the American dream was not for everyone, had become too real to the American reader. Gatsby, instead of being a sad tale of a poor country boy who makes it big, was read as a tale of oppression by the affluent class and was not read with any affection for being rich that currently grabs our nation's attention. In Gatsby, Fitzgerald wrote about the lives of the ultra-rich and the ultra-chic at the end of Long Island. In Tender is the Night, it was trips to Paris and the south of France that both represented dreams that had slipped away from Americans as wealth piled up in the hands of fewer and fewer, richer and richer people. People did not connect with, I'm not feeling well, so I'm going to go to the south of France for 6 months. It didn't ring true. Some critics say the icing on the cake was how the characters escaped any accountability, shielded by their wealth in ways that were both foreign and real to many readers. In short, readers hated Tom. They hated Daisy. This part was expected, but they hated Gatsby too. This was not expected and led the book to be hated by critics and readers, and what few readers there were. So how did this book, which didn't even make out its advance, go on to be widely considered one of the great American novels? How many of you have read Gatsby? Yeah, right? Right? How did it go from not even working to being one of the great novels? In fact, Fitzgerald often has 2 novels on the list of greatest American novels. Tender as the Night and Gatsby are on a lot of those lists together, and neither one of them sold during his lifetime. He went to his grave proud of his work and dismayed by the response. Gatsby became famous, you're not going to believe this, Gatsby became famous when the U.S. military in World War II became concerned that its soldiers were bored and getting into trouble. So they printed 122 million flimsy little pamphlets of 1,300 different titles, and they were distributed free to military people. 155,000 of those were The Great Gatsby, because Scribner just gave it to them. Nobody wanted it. Here, print that one. 155,000 of those, and the military members loved the book. And when they came home, their flimsy little copies need to be replaced, and they told all their friends who went out and bought copies. And since then, one other thing happened. Right after the death of Zelda, a professor from Cornell University published a biography of Fitzgerald. He waited until Zelda died because Zelda didn't come out looking too good. Since then, and that biography itself was a bestseller. Since then, since the war effort of the military and those little flimsy pamphlets and the biography, Gatsby has sold 30 million copies and has been translated into 42 different languages. Just as a quick aside, I cannot imagine doing something like Gatsby and not knowing that it was good. Can you imagine 30 million copies? There was one year, 1940, where where Fitzgerald's royalties from all his books was $13. He was an unadulterated failure as a writer in his lifetime. My reflection on all of this intertwined story, the story that involves real people, the characters, the readers, the critics, is that American ideals seem to really have not changed all that much in these 100 years that have gone by since Gatsby was published. The systems that led to the excesses and malaise of the 1920s led to the Great Depression and the breaking down of those systems, only to have them rebuilt from the rubble a couple generations later, starting in the 1980s. Financial ruin has been avoided, shifted largely to the poor, and what's worse, the fragility built into America's financial systems have somehow managed to become profit centers for those at the very top. People who profit in periods of economic disaster as well as economic glory. Tom and Daisy Buchanan were insulated then, able to buy off any accountability. But today's Tom and Daisy Buchanans are able not only to buy off accountability, but their ability to buy off accountability is seen as, by large cross-sections of our population, as a sign of strength. Gatsby, Scott, himself, and Zelda all led lives that ended up in tragedy, due mostly to the effects of outside influences they were not able to funnel or control, while Tom and Daisy went merrily along their way. The quote from the book that struck me the most was the one that Jill read for the reading right before we started this. Let me read it again for you. See if it holds true for you today. These are the words of Nick, the narrator, as we pointed out earlier, or maybe the words of Fitzgerald, and I'm going to read this to you. They were careless people, Tom and Daisy. They smashed up things and creatures and then retreated back into their money or vast carelessness or whatever it was that kept them together, and let other people clean up the mess they made. 50 or so years later, when we were starting to make these careless people our leaders and our heroes, we allowed ourselves to stop seeing Tom and Daisy as Fitzgerald saw them, poor lost souls, and we started to see them instead as role models. As disturbing as that transition may be, the most disturbing thing I read in all of these rabbit holes that I went down was a quote by a recent reviewer of the book, because 100 years on, there's lots of stuff out there about the book right now. Unfortunately, I lost track of the actual quote, so I can't attribute the quote. Again, a lot of rabbit holes. I can't attribute the quote, but it stuck with me. It was so powerful and so thought-provoking. I think it might have been a joke, the way he wrote it. I say he. I don't remember who it was. I'm just assuming it was a he. Or at least it was a tongue-in-cheek sort of snarky remark. But there's a lot of truth behind it. And it's setting up... So I have to set it up a little bit if you haven't read the book in a while, okay? So you need to know that one of the storylines in the book involves a yellow car, and something tragic happens in that yellow car and causes a domino effect of tragic events. There, that's all you need to know to understand this quote, okay? I don't want to give it away for you. For all that Gatsby paints in his 48,000 words, it's a very short book. It's about half the length of modern-day novels. For all the intricacies, for all the hidden nooks and crannies, for all the individual collective psyches that it shows us, this one comment, which wasn't even in the book, struck me the hardest. It said, "The moral of The Great Gatsby is, don't buy a yellow car." In other words, do what you're going to do. Don't worry about morality or ethics, or for that matter, anyone else. Just don't get caught. That one moment, that one comment made my heart sink. This is what we've come to. As long as you can dodge accountability, it's okay. Hire good lawyers. Don't buy a yellow car. That's America today, isn't it? Don't fix the systems that track us toward this cycle of boom and bust. Rather, just make sure that when it splatters, none of it gets on you. I don't know if that's what Fitzgerald was thinking. Maybe he was more focused on the permanence of class, what we now call caste. Maybe he was just sad that despite his success, he could never be like Tom and Daisy. Maybe he was just whining that the accused of that made his book sell so miserably during his lifetime. Unfortunately, we'll never know. All we have is our own sense of what Fitzgerald and Gatsby were up to. May we take this opportunity here at the 100th anniversary to read these slim 48,000 words and to look into the soul of this maybe great, maybe sad, maybe both man. Maybe we're all both sad and great. Maybe that's why we're here. Maybe we're all both just trying to figure it out one day at a time. Maybe that's the best we can actually hope for. Americans today seem to aspire to this above it all, an accountable life that Tom and Daisy had. Maybe America would do well for a quick reread too. Maybe then we can see people for who they really are, and not some fictionalized versions of who we want them to be. May we hear these words in peace and love. Amen. And now, I failed to mention that I asked Julia to bring us some period music. So we had been playing some period music in between, which was just wonderful, some 1920s music. But now I invite us to stand if you are ready and willing and able, and help us sing our second hymn. Let it be a dance. Each time we come together, we move. We move with the words we hear. We move with the music we hear. Sometimes we even dance. We move with the light of the chalice, which, like us, you and I, flickers and flutters from side to side, moving constantly, yet tethered to its source. We extinguish this chalice now, but not as a symbolic ritual, but as a practical ritual. We do this because the flickering, fluttering light of our congregation is carried within each of us present here, those not present here today, those who have joined us on YouTube, and those who have left this community long time ago, never to return. I invite Chris to extinguish our chalice. We are so grateful for your presence this morning. For those of you who have joined us on YouTube, after the postlude, we'll be ending our live streaming service. Thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing you again whenever you can. May we, in the course of our week to come, be able to feel the liberating freedom of this religious path we share. May our gods welcome us. May they challenge us to live up to our own expectations of ourselves, whatever and wherever they may be. And may the world around us light up so we may see ourselves back to clarity and wholeness. Amen.